Folks, welcome to this special edition episode of the Drew Deeks Show, I guess you could say. I got my buddy Brandon jumping in. I promised you guys that we would get a bit more in-depth analysis and insight on Shane Wright, and I know that it is the news. The news of the day today is that Carey Price is returning to the crease for the first time this season, which is pretty big news for Habs fans. So we will get to him later tonight or tomorrow with a full reaction on that. But in the meantime, my friend Brandon Caputo joining us from the Armchair GM Sports Network, a guy that I had the pleasure of being on the OHL Tonight live for the first time ever, covering the Ice Dogs just before the COVID shutdown. So, Brandon, first of all, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you, man.
Thanks a lot, Drew. Thanks for having me on the channel for the first time. Glad to come on and talk to you and maybe rip the Habs a little bit. But no, I'm just kidding. My Sabres, they're getting there. But no, it's a pleasure to be on for the first time.
Good stuff. Good. I love your sense of humor. I got to know that the more I've gotten to know you. I'm like, you got to show that more, Brandon. I want to see that more out of you. But so we're going to start with Shane Wright. But there is a couple more things we're going to get to today for you folks. And Brandon, you also just saw Owen Power live, his home debut with the Buffalo Sabres last night against the St. Louis Blues. And we're going to talk about him. I really want to hear more about him actually from you. And then if we have time, we're going to get to this as well. OHL prospects to keep an eye out for in the 2022 NHL Entry Draft. Brandon, you're really dialed on the OHL. That's your basically full-time gig outside of your other full-time job. So, but let's start with Shane Wright. And what did you see from him in the couple of games that you got to see beyond just the one that I saw here in Niagara?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remain nonpartisan today. That's why I'm wearing baseball in my Yankees jersey today. But I do cover the Niagara Ice Dogs for the OHL through our own podcast. And as well, I do some color commentary for the radio side of things on road games. And then, as Drew mentioned, we also do a weekly show called Ice Dogs Extra on Wednesday nights with myself, Matt Young, and Austin Broad. So I am, the problem with the OHL this year was the fact that they only played against their own conference. So the Ice Dogs played in the Eastern Conference. They only really played against Eastern Conference teams. They played one Western Conference team, and that was the Erie Otters, because Erie has to come up through Niagara to get to any of the other games that they end up playing. So we didn't get to see the Western Conference a whole lot this year. But fortunately for us who cover the East, we got to see Shane Wright because the Kingston Frontenacs are in the Eastern Conference. And for the Montreal Canadiens fans, obviously Shane Wright is the consensus #1 overall pick going into the NHL draft this year. He's on the radar, so hopefully the Habs can, win that draft lottery and not do what my Sabres have done twice before, and that's lose the draft lottery. I know what that's like too well, but I've also seen them win 2 times, so seen the good and the bad from that. But Shane Wright, since he was granted exceptional status into the league, Drew, as a 15-year-old, he's really taken the league by storm here. And in his rookie year, which was his exceptional status year, which, if you guys aren't aware, players in the OHL, they have to apply for exceptional status into the league, and there are only certain players that are granted this status, Shane Wright being one of them. There's actually another one coming into the next OHL draft, and that is Michael Misa. He plays for the Mississauga Sens. Yep. But the ones that might stand out to you are players like John Tavares and Connor McDavid are 2 great ones. Sean Day was also one as a defenseman, and he kind of fizzled out in his NHL career. But for the most part, only the best of the best types of players get granted exceptional status, and Shane Wright was one of them. So he's in his rookie year, his 15-year-old year, 15 to 16, he had 66 points in 58 games. And then obviously the shutdown happened with the Ontario Hockey League last year, so they did not play a season. So he missed his entire kind of second year, which Connor McDavid says was, one of the most important development years for him when he was in the OHL and for Erie, going from his first year to his second year. He put on a lot of weight, put on a lot of muscle, and kind of really learned how to kind of go about the league. So when Shane Wright kind of got going this year, it was essentially his third year, but it was really his second year because he didn't get to play last year with the OHL shutdown. And what he's done with Kingston has been nothing short of incredible, Drew. He's got 94 points in 61 games, and he's really picked it up the second half of the year. The first half of the year, he kind of, was a little bit frustrated with how things were going and all the attention that he was getting, because he's a really humble guy. He's a quiet guy. He's a leader by example and really wants to talk about his teammates. That was one thing that shout out to Kingston's longtime radio broadcaster, Jimmy Gilchrist, who called his 2900th game recently. When I spoke to him for our content, he told me that for somebody that has been covering him all season and for his whole OHL career is that he really didn't want to talk about himself. He was really frustrated that everybody was asking him questions. So the first half of the season, he was really nowhere to be found on the score sheet as far as the top point getters in the OHL. And people had him kind of ranked in possibly the 170 point range going into the year, which was crazy to me to even think that somebody would kind of have something like that. But in the second half of the season, he's kind of projected, continued to go up here. And he went all the way from 27th in the league in points. And I believe he's now right outside the top five. And probably by the end of this weekend, he'll end up finishing in the top five if he can get 6 points and reach that 100-point mark, which a lot of people in the first half of the year didn't think he could get. But that's basically an overview of what Shane Wright has done this season. As far as what type of player you might be able to get in Shane Wright, I know you spoke of it, Drew, on the last reaction video you did, but his peripheral vision, I think, is one of his strongest suits. He's a very smart hockey player. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Yes, he has a good shot, but he's an incredible playmaker. He makes all the players around him better. He plays with some high elite talent like Martin Chromiak, who's an LA Kings draft pick, Lucas Edmonds, who is leading the Ontario Hockey League in points this year as an overage rookie, which is pretty incredible. And guys like Jordan Frasca and Zane Wisdom are also some very high-end talent that the Kingston Frontenacs have right now. And Shane Wright is a great two-way player. He uses his vision very well. He's able to find guys when he's not even looking. He makes defenders and those defending him kind of look silly sometimes because he is able to just kind of find a pass where you didn't even think that he was even going to look for. So he's one of those guys where, again, played against Niagara, Drew, you saw him, but I think going into this will be his first playoffs. He's going to learn a lot with Kingston. They should be a team that goes for a deep run into the Ontario Hockey League playoffs. And what Jimmy Gilchrist said, the voice of the Kingston Frontenacs, he would be shocked if Shane Wright was back in the Ontario Hockey League next year for Kingston.
Well, that's what has me curious, though, because, I mean, he just turned 18 and obviously had to skip a year because of the COVID shutdown. So, I mean, I know that he's having a great season and everything, but in terms of maybe filling out his frame and really getting his body ready for taking hits at the pro level, I mean, would it hurt him to maybe, I don't know about junior, but maybe just to have him in, say, maybe the AHL next year? What do you think the best course of development for him would be or should be?
It's tough because a lot of these players that are in the CHL, they don't even have the American Hockey League availability or eligibility to even go and play for the American Hockey League. There's certain ramifications with that as far as import players and other things like that. But from what I'm gathering, he's not allowed to play in the American Hockey League next year. It's either the NHL or the OHL, which is something that the Sabres had a decision to make a couple of years back with guys like Sam Reinhart and Dylan Cousins, who both were sent back to their American Hockey League affiliates instead of playing or Western Hockey League affiliates, which is part of the CHL, as opposed to playing in the NHL. So I'm not really too sure if the Montreal Canadiens are really going to do a full tear down rebuild or they're going to try to go back on the fly here if they're going to try to remain competitive next year. I think it would be nice to get Shane Wright in the lineup, but like you said, if he does come back to Kingston next year, again, it's tough because he's already seems like he's a man playing against boys already, and when he goes into that third year, technically his fourth year, he would be dominant in the Ontario Hockey League. So I would think from the Montreal Canadiens front office standpoint and their development team, would they really want him to go and dominate again in the OHL, score 150 points, or would they rather have him learning the style of the NHL game? Even though Montreal is obviously going to be in a rebuild, it might be good for him to kind of build through that adversity and kind of learn what it's like to play in the NHL, because the season's going to essentially, from a Habs perspective, they're not really going to be competing next year. They're going to be in the stage of developing their young players. So I could see them in a situation where they bring Shane Wright up and they have him play in the NHL next year and kind of just have him use that year as a development year to learn what it's like to play in the NHL. He's a very smart player, but he's going to have to kind of get a little bit bigger, and adjusting to the NHL game is something completely different than junior hockey.
Yeah, and this is all like based on the premise that the Habs actually win the lottery. So I mean,
Yeah.
like, I should make that clear because some of my viewers are like, that there's a good chance still that they won't get him, and I'm like, yeah, of course, I'm aware of that. We just haven't had the chance to go after the first overall pick since I've been a Habs fan ever. So it's just really an exciting opportunity to talk about a player like him, and I really like what you said there about. It's some good information to note that say the Canadians were fortunate enough to get him, they wouldn't be able to send him down to the AHL, or what was kind of the specifics on that you were saying there?
With the NHL contracts, if a player is drafted from a CHL team, they cannot go back to, or they cannot be assigned to the American Hockey League. They either have to go to the NHL team or they have to report back to their CHL team. So they either the Western Hockey League, the QMJHL, or the Ontario Hockey League. You can't, unless you're of age, you can't play in the American Hockey League. From what I'm gathering, from what I've seen with Sabres prospects, and trust me, I've seen a lot of Sabres prospects come and go through this organization in the last 10 years of this rebuild. But again, it's a situation where they have to report either to the NHL team or the OHL team. There's really no opportunity for them to go to the American Hockey League if they're still eligible for junior hockey.
If they're still eligible for junior. Okay, I think
And
that's
last year was a little bit different because of the pandemic year. So because the OHL didn't have a season last year and the CHL did not play for the most part, you saw guys go to the American Hockey League and at least start the year there. And obviously some of them got to play more than others, but for the most part, if they've graduated from being eligible for junior hockey like Akil Thomas was last year, once he was done with the Ontario Hockey League, Niagara and Peterborough, he was no longer eligible to play in the league. Then he was able to report to the Ontario Reign and LA's American Hockey League affiliate.
That's some good insight. Okay, I appreciate that info. So I think everyone will. Now let's go to Owen Power, who you got to see live last night for his first home game, second career NHL game with the Buffalo Sabres, first overall pick in the 2021 NHL Entry Draft. So we've seen him in the World Juniors a little bit, and I'm guessing. Now here's a quick question right off the cuff. Here is there an opportunity for him to still play because he's played in the OHL? Will he be able to play in the World Juniors this year?
That because the World Juniors is happening in the summer this year because of uh, the tournament being shut down in December and January. That I don't know. I don't know if they're going to make some sort of you know exceptions because of the
Yeah.
fact that the players, maybe they'll, if you played in the tournament in December, you'll be eligible to play in the tournament that's going to finish in the summertime, because we've never had that before. We've never had the World Juniors completely shut down mid tournament and then kind of restart or get replayed in the summer. So I'm not too sure if they're going to make eligibility requirements a little bit more lenient this year because of the fact that they didn't get to play. And maybe if you were on a roster for one of those teams, maybe you'll be eligible to play. But typically, if you have an NHL contract, you don't usually see guys playing in the World Juniors at that point. But Owen Power, I think other than Mason McTavish, who is now a member of the Hamilton Bulldogs, going to go on a deep run with them in the Ontario Hockey League playoffs. Owen Power, I think, has been on many different teams this year. I mean, you look at where he started to now. I mean, he's played for Michigan. He's played for Team Canada in the World Juniors, and now he's playing in the NHL for the Buffalo Sabres after just finishing up with Michigan. And I really expected him to go back to Michigan this year. I really thought that was the right spot for him. They're a loaded team. They really had a shot to win the national championship this year. They had, I think, 4 top 10 picks in the NHL draft in 2021. So the Michigan University was loaded with top end talent. Matty Beniers being another one who was the second overall pick to Seattle. So they've had a lot of guys that were drafted, but all came back to really go for it this year in the NCAA. And Owen Power, he's just a very smart hockey player. We saw his debut in Toronto the other night, and he was able to be a +2 in that game. Broke up a really nice 2-on-1 pass that looked like a tap in for Austin Matthews, who's leading the NHL in goals. So he really didn't look like he was intimidated at all, and really came out with a strong effort. Being in his hometown, in his backyard in Mississauga, had a lot of friends and family there, so he was able to kind of put all that together and have a good game and not let the pressure and the big moment kind of get to him. He didn't really look wide eyed at many times during the game. And as far as last night, it was his home debut in Buffalo. I was there. first hockey game I've been to in Buffalo in over 2 years. So that was nice to be back in the arena and to see Owen Power's NHL debut or home debut was really cool. Again, he had a lot of friends and family there as well last night, but another tough team in the St. Louis Blues, obviously a Stanley Cup champion and a really they're a physical, they're a strong team. They're a team that gets at you. They have some highly skilled elite players. We saw that one clip, I'm sure you've seen it, of Vladimir Tarasenko absolutely making Owen Power look like a 19-year-old defenseman. But if you take that clip out of it, he really had a good game. He had a stable game. He was on the starting lineup with Henry Jokiharju. Then they switched it up. They kind of had him playing with Rasmus Dahlin at times. They had him on the power play at times as well. So I think, and Don Granato, the head coach of the Sabres, really said that he every game and every shift he sees Owen Power getting better. He's asking more questions. He's asking the assistant coaches what he can do better in practice. And when Don Granato goes and asks him about his evaluation, it was spot on to what the coach had thought. So Owen Power really knows, and he's mindful of what things he needs to work on and what things he's good at and what he needs to do to be successful in this league. But for somebody his size, he is a very fluent skater, and he's a very, very smart defenseman, doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes, and he's going to be able to get the opportunity to continue his offensive game as well. He had one good opportunity last night cutting in when a loose puck came in, but it was stopped by Binnington. But he's really starting to progress here, and even after 2 games, you can really see what hopefully the Buffalo Sabres will be getting from this this special player for years to come. Again, he's only 19 years old. Rasmus Dahlin started as a rookie as well, so he's only 21. A lot of people have thought that he's been in the league forever, but as Owen Power continues to develop, Drew, you'd think that he's only going to become, a top 4 or a top 2 D-man for this team maybe in the next year or two.
Some people throwing out the early Victor Hedman comparisons. A little early for that though, or do you think that that's maybe in his future sights?
I'm not going to say anything about comparisons because when Dahlin came out, they said, "Is this the next Nicholas Lidstrom?" And I'm thinking, wow, 7 Norris trophies. That's going to be a lot to be able to live up to. But
Wow.
I mean, Victor Hedman had a rough rookie year. So people, if they go back and look, he didn't really kind of start to pick up until his 3rd year in the NHL. His first 2 years were kind of rocky. The Lightning, weren't the dominant team that they are now as of yet. But again, you can kind of see the comparisons, and it's just different. The projection of these players, you can't really go and say they're going to be this type of player in 2 or 3 years, which you'd hope that you'd love to see him be Victor Hedman in year 3. But he's got to get a full season under his belt here before we can start kind of really thinking about what we can see out of Owen Power. And especially for defensemen, it's so much harder to develop defensemen in this league and starting out at a young age, because they really have to learn what it's like to play that grind, that defensive game, and be responsible in your own zone. Again, going up against the best players in the world coming down on you every single shift. So nothing's made easy for these young kids coming into the league, but it seems like they're more ready than ever to kind of step in at a young age and kind of get even better as the years go on.
Well, that's encouraging for Sabres fans, I hope to hear, because I mean, like, for your first 2 games, for most of the analysis to be positive is a very, very good thing. So good stuff, Brandon. We'll appreciate that. And then let's get to our last little topic here. OHL prospects for 2022 NHL Entry Draft to keep an eye on. So we know that Shane Wright is a possibility for anybody. Well, he's going to likely go first overall for whoever gets him, not just Montreal. Okay. So even for maybe Habs fans' sake that are tuning into my channel, or even just players that you're generally excited about, what can you tell us about some of the guys that are projected to go high in this year's draft?
I forgot to mention Owen Power got his first career assist last night, so that was great to see as well. So
beautiful.
He did pick up an assist on Alex Tuck's goal, and they let him go first in the line. So it was really cool to have Owen Power get his first career point in his home debut. So I just wanted to mention that real quick.
Yes.
As for prospects go, guys that maybe. 'Habs fans can look at as a late first, second round pick, because I know they do have a boatload of second round picks as well. I think, guys, as far as the midterm rankings, if a guy like Ty Nelson is available, which I doubt he is, North Bay, he was the first overall pick in the 2020 OHL draft. right ahead of the Niagara Ice Dogs taking Pano Fima second overall. But Ty Nelson has been such a strong player for the North Bay Battalion, and he's really turned them into a team that isn't just a defensive, boring team. They've really turned into a team that scores a lot of goals. They're very difficult to play against. They play a high-tempo game, and he's a guy that could be a very solid two-way defender in the NHL if he develops properly. He's got over a point a game as a defenseman right now, or almost a point a game as a defenseman right now for North Bay, and has already been their top defenseman after missing his rookie season last year. And North Bay was last place in the all of the OHL last year, and now they're going to be a playoff team. So their projection with players like Ty Nelson have really been incredible to see this year. So if they're looking for a defenseman, I think Ty Nelson would be somebody to look at. As far as other kind of mid first, early second round picks, David Goyette from Sudbury has really rocketed up the standings as well. He's leading all rookies in points for the Sudbury Wolves. So nobody really saw that coming, but he's really come on and been a catalyst to their kind of rebuild and restructure them like the Niagara Ice Dogs. They're kind of looking to use this year as a rebuild year and then really start to go at it next year. And David Goyette's going to be one of those players for the Sudbury Wolves next year that I've got to see a lot because Niagara, being in Sudbury's division, had played them many times this year. So David Goyette leading the Ontario Hockey League rookies in points. Another kind of guy to look at quickly here, Paul Ledwinski from the Kingston Frontenacs. Again, you don't really hear about him because of guys like Shane Wright, but he was a top 5 pick in the 2020 ball in the Ontario Hockey League, and I think he's a guy that is one person that really, I think next year, if Shane Wright doesn't make or doesn't stay in the OHL, he's a guy that's going to take over, I think, for Kingston because Lucas Edmonds will be gone as well. So he's somebody that can really step into a top line role and really start to see what Paul Ledwinski can do in the Ontario Hockey League next year. He's a center if Montreal is looking at him. And quickly, anyone else that I can think of, Owen Beck from the Mississauga Steelheads and Luca Del Bella Blues have really been two guys that have really helped in them becoming a playoff team. They were kind of a team going into the season that people thought maybe would be a fringe playoff team, but possibly could miss. But what James Richmond has done with that squad and Owen Beck and Luca Del Bella Blues coming out of nowhere to kind of be two guys helping their kind of turnaround for the Mississauga Steelheads. I think those are two guys as well as forwards to kind of look at. But I know we can get into much more of it, but I know we're in time constraints today, so I'm sure I can come back and talk about some more and maybe some other Niagara Ice Dog players that I've seen that are going to be progressing and going to be OHL draftees going into this year, NHL draftees.
Yeah, for sure. We'd love to hear more about, and especially here in Niagara. I mean, obviously Niagara going through a big controversy right now. So I've talked enough about that lately on our channel here. So, but that being said, hopefully it's a turning of the page for the Ice Dogs, and we can start to focus on what they want to get to, and that's a Memorial Cup, and really before that, even an OHL Cup. So you're close with the Ice Dogs. You're up in the booth every game. You're on the road with them. So certainly, I always love to follow you on Twitter, and you guys can do that too. And you can give them your handle if you want, Brandon, and then also where they can find the shows that you're doing, the Dog Pound podcast, of course, the Leading Ice Dogs podcast, and also the Armchair GM Sports Network, which you created. And I had the brief opportunity to work with you on, but also just tell folks where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot, but any audio platforms that you find your podcast, you can find us at the Armchair GM Sports Network, and more specifically, our website, armchairgmsports.com, our YouTube channel at Armchair GM Sports, Armchair GM Sports Network on YouTube, and as well our Twitter handle for our Dog Pound podcast, which is our main podcast on the network, which covers, like Andrew mentioned, the Niagara Ice Dogs at Dog Pound Podcast. We update all the time on there, and then as well, you can like us on Instagram and Facebook by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. So wherever you're getting your podcasts at, we're available for you guys. Search up the Armchair GM Sports Network, and you'll stumble upon all of our podcasts and what we're doing over here at the network. So really appreciate you being able to plug that for us as well.
Yeah, of course. No, you're dedicated to your craft, man. We keep each other on our toes, I think, throughout the season. And like the odd time we actually get to see each other in person at a game when I'm coming into work, going to work my food and beverage gig at the Meridian Center there. So it's always nice to bump into you in the hallway and see you just grinding away, plugging away at the media gig, because certainly it's very clear that this is meant meant for you to do, and I just hope you keep at it, man, because you're doing a great job.
Oh, appreciate it. Thanks. I'm looking forward to the off season. That's for sure. It's been a long season being on the road with such a great voice in Niagara Ice Dogs for the radio and the radio side of things. And Ted Lehman, I'm learning a lot as far as radio color commentary, and even the show on Wednesday nights on TV that you also do a show on your TV Niagara as well with our Ice Dog Extra show that you were able to be a part of with the OHL Tonight at one point. But even with those guys, Austin Broad, Matt Young, they're such knowledgeable guys about junior hockey and just prospects in general. So it's really taught me a lot in the last year or so, and really continuing to kind of grow into my craft here with what I want to do. And I know you're on a trajectory as well. So it's always nice to kind of see keep up and see what each other's doing. And obviously the Drew Deeks channel is taking off. And as a Sabres fan, I'll take it over a Leafs or Bruins podcast. That's for sure.
Well, we certainly found some common ground there, right? So I remember one of my first videos was talking about the Taylor Hall signing and how excited I was for Sabres fans, and I know how that went, but I did have a Sabres jersey on, Brandon, so I think you'll be happy to hear that. I had a collection of jerseys I borrowed from all my buddies. I had to return them all because I was trying to cover so many teams at once, but harder than it looks. So I'm sticking to one team, mostly with the Habs. But anyway, thanks so much for jumping on, pal. And I look forward to seeing you again on here sooner and later.
Yeah, can't wait to come back on. The OHL draft is at the end of April, so hopefully I can come on and talk about kind of the fallout of that with the exceptional status players that were kind of granted there, and kind of go into more in depth about the prospects and what Montreal might be able to look at as far as OHL prospects going into the 2022 NHL draft.
I look forward to it, my friend. Well, thanks, folks, for watching. If you enjoy the show, you know which buttons to push. So we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks.